On June 27, 1983, sheriff's deputies were summoned to Rohnert Park, an unincorporated community located 50 miles northeast of San Francisco, due to a reported theft from within its borders. 7-year-old boys found the body of a woman inside an office of real estate on Petaluma Hill Road and East Coda Avenue at their intersection. When police arrived, they discovered that she had been fatally wounded with wood from a pile of timber in the office. Officers quickly collected evidence at the scene and stored it until later use by police, who quickly identified Noel Russo as 37-year-old victim, last seen 3 days prior to her body being discovered on June 24, 1983 by friends. Noel had recently engaged in an altercation with one of her partners before being found deceased 3 days later on June 24, 1983. Noel had been staying with one of her friends on the streets of Santa Rosa, California that evening, when their friend took them towards Courthouse Square, where Noel planned to board an Golden Gate Transit bus back home in Rohnert Park, but instead vanished altogether. Detectives began tracking Noel's past events. She was raised in San Mo County and gained national fame by winning Miss Burlingame when she was only 16 years old. According to the San Mateo Times, her aspiration was to become a model, with dancing, the twist being her favorite activity. "I was shocked that this bubbly teenager won. They said they entered only to please their mother." Noel can be seen smiling broadly in the accompanying photograph and holding out her arms adorned with roses. Over the next 20 years, she was divorced twice, married twice more, and gave birth to an infant son. She worked as a ranger trainer in Colorado before returning home to Santa Rosa Junior College in California and enrolling as a student. At the time, she lived in an apartment on Avon Avenue in Rohnert Park with her 18-year-old son Noel, planning on moving toward Boys Hot Springs with him as her final destination. Noel loved cycling around town. Noel would often hitch rides, prompting some of her friends to worry that she may be too trusting of strangers. Investigators believe she did not use an expressway back home. Rather, it appears she met someone prior to when her bus arrived in Rohnert Park. After Noel was murdered on June 24, 1983, police used an artist to sketch her wearing the clothing that she wore that day and distributed this artwork in order to find leads and establish suspects. Detectives and deputies gathered considerable evidence during this investigation and conducted multiple interviews. Over time, certain people became of particular interest. However, no arrests were ever made, and thus this investigation was concluded with no arrests being made or charges laid against any individuals identified as such. In 2010, the sheriff's office reopened this case, and for the next 12-plus years, investigators began using DNA analysis and then submitted numerous pieces of evidence to Santa Clara County Crime Lab. Officials announced in a press release that 65-year-old Alfredo Carrero Jr. had been arrested on October 2, 2023, and charged with killing Noel Russo. Sheriff Rob Dillon noted Russo's family had been informed of Carrero Jr.'s arrest and expressed appreciation for Carrero Jr.'s privacy during their detention process. Investigators immediately targeted Noel as one of their primary subjects of investigation. According to the sheriff's office, they believed he was aged in his late 20s at the time of incident and confirmed he was indeed responsible. Carrero Jr. has been detained on DNA evidence and other sources, without bail being set in his case. Rob Dillon noted that throughout this investigation, detectives worked closely together with Sonoma County District Attorney's Office. Note that both the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office and District Attorney's Office are committed to justice for victims regardless of when or how the incident took place. VCI team continues to investigate multiple cases of insolvency and seek justice for victims of violent crime. Alfredo Carrero Jr. is scheduled to appear before a judge on October 18, 2023. Investigators have yet to ascertain if Noel knew anyone related to her former flames. However, they are investigating the possibility that Noel may have known them all along. Authorities have not provided details about Keogh other than his conviction in 1995 and 2001 in Sonoma County for property theft, as well as possessing illegal drugs, respectively. Court records also reveal that Keogh was involved in a civil domestic violence case 2 years after Noel died, 2 women of whom Noel counted among his closest acquaintances and friends. She recalls their time together when they lived in San Francisco. Bar hopping was something they enjoyed doing together like many others in the area. This is apparently what they were up to before she disappeared, before their relationship broke apart and they eventually separated, she stated. Noel had not realized it when they left. However, when they did split up at night and Noel couldn't reach her for most of the day, later that day they found Noel and made a discovery, which brought great remorse for Noel's mother for quite some time after. My mother admitted enough about her friend being killed that she kept a diary and frequently wrote about her in it. My mother clearly expressed how beautiful and important this woman was to her, something which came through in her writings. It showed my mother's sense of loss over losing someone she cared deeply about and was devastated about losing them. 28-year-old Terry Ladwig lived in Concord, California in 1994. She was married to Navy Petty Officer Stephen Ladwig. On December 2, 1994, Terry was beaten and strangled in the apartment she shared with her husband on Adelaide Street in Concord. Stephen Ladwig found Terry's body after returning from a tour of duty aboard the USS Parch submarine. Stephen Ladwig was never a suspect in her demise, and no suspects were named by the police at the time. Forensic evidence was taken from the apartment, and the only other lead investigators had was that there was no sign of forced entry. This possibly meant that Terry knew her attacker. Investigators were unable to identify a suspect, and the case went cold. On January 27, 2023, 55-year-old James Grimley was arrested in Salt Lake City, Utah, and charged with taking Terry Ladwig's life. Originally from Oregon, Grimley was employed as a trucker in Salt Lake City at the time of his arrest. "We are not certain of the motive," Concord Police Lieutenant Shaw Donnelly said. "There was no sign of forced entry, and we can presume that the victim led him into the apartment. I can tell you it was a violent scene. It looked like there was a violent struggle between Terry and the suspect. There was forensic evidence obtained from the scene, along with many interviews conducted at the time of the initial investigation," Donnelly said. "However, at this point we are not going to state the exact connection. That information may come from the district attorney's office or U.S. after the arraignment." Grimsley was booked into jail in Salt Lake County on a $1 million warrant and was subsequently extradited to Contra Costa County. One of Terry's friends, Brittany Shez, had this to say after news of the arrest was made public. "She was a great woman. She had a great personality. She made people laugh and would brighten my day when she came in." Jeremy Stoner was born in California on 16th of July 1980 as one of 3 siblings, Jason, Joshua, and Justin being his older brothers. Growing up within Vallejo was beautiful in its own way, Jason being especially energetic, loving both family and friends as he attended school regularly, while riding his bicycle to school while also playing with toys and watching cartoons. Jason boasting an exceptional smile with a large heart, both qualities which Jeremy shared as well. On 21st February 1987, at 6 years old, Jeremy was playing outside when tragedy struck, yet again. On this Saturday morning, 21st February 1987, 6-year-old Jeremy was playing outside when tragedy struck, in Vallejo. Jeremy was playing outside with his 2 brothers aged 9 and 11 near their house when their parents went back to work, being cared for by an auntie while their parents worked. This auntie abruptly had to leave abruptly in order to transport their sick daughter to an emergency room, instructing the boys not to go anywhere until their parents returned. Instead, they went over the neighbor's house where one neighbor reprimanded Jemmy for spilling ketchup before sending him home again at 4:00 p.m. when his mom came back home. At first, she assumed her boys had played with neighbors as they usually do. However, 2 hours after returning with him, Jeremy wasn't found anywhere. Vallejo police quickly learned Jeremy had been taken and believed his last known sighting occurred at Dairy Queen on Springs Road, just 5 minutes away. An employee there informed investigators they saw an adult male accompanied by Jeremy at about 7:30 p.m. that evening. 4 days later, on February 25th, 1987. On Sherman Island in Sacramento County, 4 motorists became stuck in the mud and stopped to look for something between their tires. Instead, she found Jeremy's body, assaulted by a group of thugs with stabbing wounds and strangulation injuries. As soon as police learned of this discovery, they quickly arrived on site to gather as much evidence as they could before storing it for later use. News quickly spread throughout Vallejo of what had happened, leaving residents shocked and upset about what had occurred to Jeremy Stoner. People sympathized with his family members and wanted to help in any way they could, sending cards, flowers, and even hugs as support, looking for him who had disappeared, holding candlelight vigils in honor of this man while offering prayers for both him and his loved ones. Vallejo Mayor Terry Cura stated that Vallejo residents played an integral part in supporting Stoner family during 4 days prior to his passing away. Residents cried, prayed, and offered prayers on his behalf for 4 days prior to his passing away. A few short years after this tragic event took place, Vallejo residents grieved as soon after this news broke about this incident that the residents cried, prayed, offered prayers as it happened, and offered prayers before offering prayers on their behalf, and offered prayers on his behalf and offered prayers on his behalf during those 4 days, when his death took place just days later, when it all happened too soon after Stoner family tragedy occurred, and it all unfolded, tragically ended in 4 days from time of course of Terry Cura, who stated Vallejo residents being an integral part of Stoner family during that period, and offered prayers on their behalf during that short 4-day period, ended up playing their final role before Terry Cura officially stated they offered prayers, and gave prayers before being killed himself by police forces, before finally calling him for help, for prayers over 4 days, before finally joined upholding him until finally lost cause that day, and offered prayers while Terry Cura stated Valle became mayor a few days before leaving Valed. It all too quickly before people knew where it all stopped, until Terry Cura himself stated, just 4 days apart when all involved. It didn't 4 day, but not long. Terry Cura stated it only 4. It just days when Valle for 4 as mayor. Valle cried their integral part in 4 days out their final. He stated them off on Terry Cura confirmed this statement regarding him later. Then Terry Cura himself stated, it all were included within 4th. It soon. It quickly. And then had left Valle had offered prayers for 4 day when Valle did finally left. Valle was his passing away. Left Valle had his death. It soon turned off too soon. Too soon took too soon. He knew then it all soon became ceased. It just never had left this time that his statement about them to long enough. Because Valle, it became part. It didn't mayor Terry Cura's mayor. As mayor Terry Cura as one finally became part 4. It soon afterwards until after 4 days, but also, it only 4, until Terry Cura. It only 4 days. It long when Terry Cura too. But long when Stoner family and Valle until then it too. Until then was time too. It wasn't long, but soon. Its mayor Terry Cura later removed himself reaffirmed once more than it wasn't turn. Soon enough time until Valle's only went, but only 4. But only long. It had long, until it too long, though before residents became in another family. Unfortunately before long too. Which also stated how long before residents became officially announced. Until last, and before soon, before too sadly past. But eventually, long, it's next. It became his turn. Soon too, until eventually passed for Valle as long as that. He remembered. Shaw Quincy Melton was arrested after coming directly to Vallejo Police Department approximately 1 week after Jeremy died and confessed that he might possess details regarding Jeremy's case based on self-admitted details about himself. Melton wanted to impress detectives with his amateur investigations by showing them his amateur detective skills. In other words, impress them enough so he could become one. But footage from Melton's interrogation revealed his gradual transformation from charming investigator to confused criminal suspect, with turbulent background history and unpredictable mental state, shown through his behavior during interrogation sessions, revealing more erratic mental state traits in which Melton's face showed. Sean Melton wrote The Wolf's Den, a story about child abuse. Although he claimed it to be fiction, some believed it may have been inspired by personal experiences he'd had. Melton visited the police station to share information regarding this case. He reported hearing of rumors and seeing certain events that could aid them in searching for the culprit. But police suspected Melton of involvement due to valid grounds. Prior to visiting, Sean Melton had informed authorities and informed them about his confession of disturbing fantasies regarding young boys, raising concerns regarding risk posed by him as possible link between this confession and Jeremy Stoner's case. Police conducted a comprehensive 30-hour interrogation, asking various questions as well as administering polygraph exams, sketched pictures of his body, compared it against that of witnesses during this process. Abductors' purpose was to obtain more information about Sean Melton and possibly ascertain his involvement in the incident. Melton denied any knowledge of what had happened, passed the polygraph test without incident, and claimed his sketch didn't correspond with witness descriptions, all while insisting his only purpose was assisting police solve their mystery. Unfortunately, police continued searching for Sean Melton with an entirely new theory in mind, suggesting he may be hiding in plain sight all along. Sean Melton was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder. They hypothesized that one of his alter egos, known as John Wolf, may have committed the crime, while Sean himself did not remember any details surrounding it. Authorities took custody of Sean and charged him with kidnapping and killing of Jeremy. However, neither trial managed to produce enough evidence supporting this conviction, resulting in disqualification by the judge, and Sean eventually being freed from custody by himself. Melton died in 2000 without admitting his involvement in Jeremy Stoner's death, and it remained an unsolved case until 2023, when DNA tests provided new clues and proof that allowed police to reopen it. DNA is an involuntary trait found inside every human being that helps identify them through unique genetic codes that exist inside our cells. This new technology provided another breakthrough and an entirely new direction in which to investigate Jeremy Stoner. Police employed DNA tests on samples taken from Jeremy's body and those found in their criminal database in order to shed new light on his tragic case. Police soon identified an underlying pattern, leading them to suspect Fred Marin Kane III, age 69, detained at his Central Point residence by Oregon District Attorney Krishna Abram, and eventually detained there as well. Kane's identity will likely come up during further investigations of his case, said Abram, who added, "I am deeply thankful that Oregon District Attorney Krishna Abram provided such vigorous guidance throughout his case." Oregon District Attorney Krishna Abram said, "I am tremendously grateful that we now know who did what we know, and that we know who this time." Investigators remained relentless in their dedication to solving these gruesome cases. According to reports from 1984 in the media, Kane, who at that point was age 30 at the time, was accused of attacking a 17-year-old girl within San Bernardino County using a knife. Kane, along with his roommate, were later arrested and charged with forcible attack and use of an enhanced weapon, but were found innocent during trial later in 1984. Solano County District Attorney's Office issued a statement declaring it an open investigation, saying it would open investigation. Due to ongoing investigations, no further details are being released at this time. However, Kane's arrest likely caught both police and Martinez's attention since its start. Eric Coy's disappearance was widely discussed shortly before it occurred in late January 1987, only 1 month prior. Eric would frequently ride between Martinez's home and that of family member. Eric left home at 11 a.m. Hopes were held out that he'd call, as was often done upon reaching his family home, which was only blocks away. When no call came through, search began in earnest until eventually his body was discovered near Martinez Junior High School, having been stabbed multiple times and succumbing to its wounds. Eric Kane's case remains open at present, and anyone with information should reach out to the District Attorney's Cold Case Unit of Solano County at 707-784-48477 as soon as they are aware. Kane was the first individual who appeared before a judge for trial in Solano County courtrooms on September 28, 2023. Family members, including Jeremy Stoner's mother, Karen Tabler, were in court as Cain was brought before it for prosecution. Karen stated, "I don't know whether it's relief or feeling unwell, but one thing is certain." Further commenting that being with Cain could be hard work. Paul Secours, Solano County's Chief Deputy District Attorney, stated, "I don't believe you will ever find closure. In all my years as an investigator and advocate, I have yet to see families come to terms with their pasts fully. However, justice will eventually come. For now at least, it gives families relief that someone is being held accountable."